Thanks, Lily. Next up, we have a guide panel. It will take us a minute here to set up, I think, with William Melton, who's also our chairman of our board of the Prince William Sound Foundation. So, and also our his streaming this live, and also William also puts all these sessions online, so you can go back from past years, and in a month or so, this year will be up to these other sessions will be available online forever. So we're welcoming William, Tori VanderBrandt, and Zoe Woods from the Tori's with Wilderness Guides and Discovery Voyagers, and Zoe's with an interpretive ranger with Baggage Bogs Visitor Center. So we got a chair that's coming in, and
hello, can everybody hear me? All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. It's awesome to be at the 7th annual Natural History Symposium. We're just thrilled that you all are here and supporting what we're doing at the Stewardship Foundation. So thanks for coming out on a rainy Monday. Lily, that was such a great presentation. Thank you. We didn't plan it. We're going to piggyback a little bit off of some of your info. But the goal today, I'm going to grab our slide advancer. It's still not working because it got turned off. There we go. All right. So, once again, I'm William Melton. I'm the board chair of the Stewardship Foundation for the past few years. And we also have Tori VanderBrandt, Zoe Woods, and Michelle's a late addition, but we're thrilled to have her. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about who they are. The purpose of today's discussion is to mainly target guides and professionals working in Prince William Sound. We want to give you examples of common questions that we've encountered over the years and share our thoughts with you. This should also be useful for folks who are heading out with their family or friends. So if you're somebody who just heads out on your boat or gets out into the Sound, I think this will be valuable for you as well. And then we want to give you all a chance to answer any questions that you might have that you haven't had a chance to ask before. So be thinking about that as we move through this. So I've already introduced myself. In addition to being the board chair, I'm a filmmaker based in Anchorage. And I think more than anything else, I was and am a Sea Kayak guide. I got started 11 years ago working with Alaska Sea Kayakers here. And I've spent a few hundred nights leading and guiding in the Sound. So it's one of my favorite places in the whole world. So the question I'm going to quickly address before passing it on to my fellow panelists is some variation on where are we? That was probably my not my most common question, but something that tended to come up from somebody in a small group setting. Where are we? Is this the ocean? Very serious, real question. And what altitude are we at? Which I love. So what I think all of these questions boil down to are giving a sense of place, geographical context of where you are in Prince William Sound, which is another reason why it's so great you all are here today, hearing from these awesome people who are sharing this knowledge with you. So you're already a huge step ahead just by being here. But what you need to know before you can give a sense of place is kind of who you're talking to. So I've got a really simple index here. You've got person A on the far left side of the index who lacks knowledge because they've never been here, because they're 10 years old and they just got off of a cruise ship. There's just somebody who doesn't know where they are maybe. And then you've got person B who knows more than you. And so you're going to be talking to somebody who falls along that scale. So think about that when you're taking out a group or working with people, where this person falls on that scale. So back to the question, where are we, and giving a sense of place? Well, if you're dealing with person A, it's real easy to say, well, hey, you're in South Central Alaska, you're in Prince William Sound. And some people will think, oh, I thought this was a Great Lake or who knows what. So they've already learned something from you. It sort of begs the question too, what is a sound? Some people might not even be thinking about the fact that that designates a geographical feature. A sound is an inlet or a bay recessed into a portion of the ocean with barriers at its entrance. And there's a few different types of sounds, but we're going to keep it pretty simple today. In areas explored by the British, the term sound was applied to inlets containing large islands. So for us, that's Montague and Hinchinbrook. Those protect the rest of the sound from some of the major weather and fetch that we have out in the Gulf. And it also just limits the way seawater gets in and out of the whole sound, making it even more unique. All right, so you've told them it's a sound. Now let's say you're dealing with somebody a little further up the scale who knows a bit more. Well, you can dive into, you're also in Chugach National Forest. And most of the land surrounding Prince William Sound is part of the Chugach National Forest, which is the second largest national forest in the United States. But there are definitely other landholders, as you heard if you were here earlier for our land management talk. And then just drilling down even further, you can get into what Tim Lydon was talking about. If you have somebody who's familiar with all that, you can start discussing the WSA or the Wilderness Study Area, which sort of sounds like an area where we study wilderness, and it is. But the Wilderness Study Area is called that because in 1980, it was designated as an area where we were going to decide whether or not it would become a wilderness area. And that just in and of itself is fun to talk about, the fact that that's been going on for 45 years and it's still in this limbo. So those are just a few examples of how you can address different people along the lines of that knowledge spectrum. Yeah, and then from there, if you have somebody who knows everything, you can get into the things that you're interested in or bring up things that you learned here. I've got a few examples, but for the sake of time, I want to pass it along to Tori.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Tori VanderBrandt. I have been a guide with Discovery Voyages for the last 10 years. I am not from Alaska. I moved up here from Tennessee when I was 15, and I just haven't been able to get away. Pretty captivating place to end up. Discovery Voyages operates out of Whittier. It's a 65-foot steel-hulled vessel. The owner, Dean Rand, has been out here for over 30 years and is just a wealth of knowledge. And I owe everything that I know to him, and as well as the number of natural resource guides that he keeps on board. And so for me, my question that I would say we would get at least once a trip, and to put it into scale, the Discovery operates with about 22 trips a year, is what should I wear? And as a guide who's been doing this for 10 years, it's very easy to want to disregard that question because it's just like, look outside. But really, when you kind of going back to what Will was saying, when you step back and you think about where folks are coming from, that they're not used to being in the northernmost temperate coastal rainforest, there really is a lot more that needs to take into consideration, and also based on the activity that you're doing. So for me, more for what should I wear, it's what should I not wear. I tell folks I do not recommend jeans. I don't recommend cotton t-shirts. Baseball cap always, and layers. Layers are my absolute favorite thing to tell folks. A merino wool base layer. You never know if you're going to go out on a hike or go kayaking, and then you're just going to get hit with a torrential rainpour for only 5 minutes, but then you're still going to keep going. And so being able to have those layers to shed can really keep you comfortable. And this also ties back to Prince William Sound is filled with a ton of little microclimates. You can be in one bay and then travel an hour and have a completely different climate that you have to address and prepare for. One thing that I am really proud about with the Discovery is They offer extra tufts to everyone that comes on board. And the reason behind that is to make sure that we're not bringing any invasive species with us into Prince William Sound. I think that's something really important to think about with folks that are going on land who may not be from Alaska. Dandelions are a big problem. And so for us to be able to make sure that we're cleaning out those extra tufts feels like we're doing our part to leave less of an impact.
All right. My name is Zoe. I'm originally from Colorado, and I worked for Rocky Mountain National Park there. Then I was a hiking and backpacking guide in Glacier National Park before finally finding my way up, chasing mountains all the way west, as far west as I could go, here to Alaska. And working at the Baggage Bogs Visitor Center, one question we get a ton is, where's the glacier? Because Portage Glacier, for those of you who have not been over there, is no longer visible from the visitor center. But it's applicable as well to the Sound because a lot of these glaciers don't look like maybe some of you guys remember growing up. If you have visitors who are coming back, they might notice that things look pretty different. And even year to year, we see glaciers change. Some of them may be retreating out of view. Some of them on days like today, you just may not see them. So you have guests who come for the glaciers because that's one of the real rich, incredible resources of the Sound. But on a day like today, how do you talk about that and tell guests where they are and give them a sense of perspective? Of course, glaciers are a really powerful tool to talk about climate change. There's almost nothing that can really show the impacts of climate change on such a scale. And glaciers have this incredible power, I think, when people get in front of them to really just recognize how small and insignificant we are. But there's a really cool kind of tie over in between glaciers and us because humans are one of the only other forces that can impact a landscape on the same scale of glaciers. And as we talk about glaciers and climate change, you'll probably get a range of reactions, everything from folks who feel intimately, this sense of grief and loss to people who may not even believe that climate change is happening. But one thing that you can do as a guide is to bring it back to the stories. They have done tons of studies to show that stories can be way more effective to change people's minds than statistics. Stories can help people remember places. They can build a connection. So I would encourage you all as guides to really lean on your own stories and your own experiences with change here in the Sound and use that to help your guests build a little bit more of a connection of their own. And then kind of tying it back to how do we talk about glaciers when we're not really seeing them? I think it's really important to tie it back, kind of as we saw in the AWCC presentation, to what they can see. So even if you're not seeing glaciers either on a cloudy day or because of glacial retreat, there are so many imprints on the landscape from valleys and rounded off mountains and the ecosystem interactions that allow us to have this incredible wealth here. There's a really great quote from Elizabeth Rush, and she says that the only way to deal with great loss is to love what remains with even more heart than before. And I really see all these guides here in the Sound as doing that work and really loving this place and convincing others to love it, even though we are undergoing this great change. Thank you.
Hi, guys. So my name is Michelle Lang, and I work at Lazy Otter Charters, and I'm a captain there. I've been working on boats in tourism for the last 10 years, and I've kind of gotten to travel around lots of places. It's my 3rd year here in Whittier, my 7th year in Alaska. I've also worked in Hawaii, New Zealand, Australia, Florida, random places. But Alaska is by far my favorite place. I absolutely love coming back here. And I do a combination of things. We do a lot of sightseeing tours, which I absolutely love. I love getting to tell people why I love the Sound so much and just the glaciers, the area. But we also get to do a lot of water taxi as well. So it's a really nice combination of getting to see the parts of the Sound that your normal tourist isn't going to get to see, but also getting to see those beautiful glaciers as well. As you can imagine, we all get crazy questions all the time. What's the altitude at? Are we in the ocean? All that crazy stuff. But I really enjoy when people ask me about the rest of the Sound because they're seeing just a kind of small section of it. And when we pull out a map at the end and all right, we saw this little section, we went to Blackstone Bay, went to these parts, but there's so much more out there as well. And people want to know about do people live out here? Are there towns? Are there, houses, things like that? And so I like answering, getting to talk to people about everyone else that lives in the Sound. It's not just the glaciers, and tell them about, the Native Alaskan villages, Valdez, all those places. And they think it's crazy that you can only drive to 2 of the towns. And so getting to tell them how people get their supplies, how they're, staying in contact, and, the crazy journey that they have to take just to get to Anchorage to get their supplies and stuff, is really cool. Even the hatcheries and stuff like that. So I enjoy getting to talk to people more about just the tourist side of Prince William Sound, but getting to tell them, more about, how much more of the Sound there is, even though there is still so few people that live here, but it has such a really rich, interesting history and culture, and stuff. So it's one of my favorite questions to answer.
We can open it up to any, we can open it up to any questions from the audience, or we can also check in with our online audience. Anybody have any burning questions for the guide panel? So you recommend having a hood on whatever jacket you've got? Sorry, I can't see you. Got it. All right. I like it.
I have a question. You guys must meet, this is more for Michelle, I guess. When you meet other boats out there, or you're out kayaking, you see other people that are using the Sound recreationally, do you try to interact with them or explain what they do, or encourage people to meet other people on the Sound when you're out there with them?
That's a great question, Michelle. I'll let you take it. The question for anybody who couldn't hear it was when we're out in the Sound and we run into other people, are we typically interacting with them or engaging with them, or letting them do their thing?
It kind of just depends, honestly, on the day. Some days we're out there, and especially in the spring, or, those that say in the wintertime, you're out there with just yourself out there and stuff. But when you do, come in contact with other boats, we like to be friendly on the radios and stuff. If we see something cool, we'll, chat with the other boats around, and kind of try and inform, like, hey, there's a whale over here, or something really cool happening. Or if, say, that there's some wildlife in the area and there's maybe boaters that aren't really aware of what's going on, we'll, try and call them on the radio and be like, hey, there's a whale over here. If you could, be careful and things like that. But we definitely try, and especially with other like tour companies and stuff in town, we try and have a good relationship and stuff with them, and chatting on the radio about stuff that we see. But there are a lot of other boats out there, obviously, in the summertime, so we kind of maybe let them do their thing, and us do just depends on the situation, I guess. I don't know if you.
I have a question for you, Michelle. How many people are on your charters, and are you always on the boat, or do you go on to the land?
Yeah, great question. So we have a couple different boats. We have our 6-pack boat, so 6 passengers, and then we have the Voyager that has 27 passengers, and the Kayak Chief that has 19. And so we do go and do a beach walk every day on our trips if we can, if weather permitting and stuff. And that's a really cool experience because we're able to pull up to kind of wherever we want to that's safe to do so, and we'll let people go actually walk around on a beach someplace that you're never really going to get to unless you have your own boat or you're kayaking or things like that. And I feel like that's a really unique thing for people to get to say, even though when you say, hey, we're pulling up to a beach, and they look at it and they're like, I don't think that's a beach, and you're like, that's an Alaska beach. But it is pretty fun for people to get to do that. Yeah.
Thanks for this panel. It's a great opportunity. So thanks to all of you. And I don't know who to specifically ask the question, but can you talk about the challenges that you experience, or maybe the fresh ideas that you might bring when people ask you about climate change, and specifically when you find yourself in conversations, because obviously it remains more than just a scientific topic, you get to learn a lot about people's political beliefs. So that's a sprawling question for any of you, and you can tackle any part of it. And thanks again for being there. It's really nice to have this discussion.
So I think with that storytelling, it's really powerful to share, again, the way you've seen the place change. So at the visitor center, we hear a lot of visitors who say when they were kids, they could go and get a piece of glacier ice and put it in their cooler for the weekend. And now if you come to Portage Lake, you will be very hard pressed to find glacier ice on the shores that you could just pick up and take with you. I think too, talking about the way you see the sound change, if you have noticed the way that Blackstone has, changed a little bit, is a little bit more asymmetrical. And I think like approaching it not with facts, paradoxically, because there are so many ways to interpret data, but really with your lived experience and the way that you or people you know or your family have seen things change. Maybe the salmon, run at a different time because the temperature is different in different parts of the sound. Perhaps you can reference the winter we just had and the winter before that and the way that really extreme climate cycles will impact Alaska. So that's kind of my experience. Does anybody else want to?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tim. That was a big concern of mine when I was first guiding the first couple of years, was wanting to inform people as best I could, but not knowing anybody's background or how they felt about certain issues. Not bring up something that might, dampen the mood or cause an argument. So I can remember coming up with a strategy of kind of like you were just talking about, Zoe, just talking about what I had seen. So I spent a bunch of time in Blackstone Bay, and year after year, we would go and see both Blackstone and Beloit, which have really, dramatic, beautiful faces. Kind of talk about, in 2015, this whole face was covered, and now you can see it's 2017 or 18 or whatever it was. There's some bare rock showing, and even in the short time I've been coming out here, this has changed. And then a big tool that I used was the hike out to the Lawrence Glacier, because it got longer every year. And I'd say, if we want time to go see this glacier, which when I was starting out, it was a 15 to 20 minute hike, it became a 25 to 30 minute hike. And I'd talk about that. And each year I'd go back out there, I'd say, okay, right where we're standing, this is where the glacier was last year. And now it's another 60, 75 yards back. And if you can point to those features, I think it makes a pretty big impact on people. You can say, man, this rock was under ice last year, and now it's not. And that might open up to the discussion to why that is. But yeah, thanks again, Tim. Any other questions? I think we've got about 3 or 4 minutes.
I got a comment and also a question. So on this climate change thing, I totally agree that I think stories are super impactful, and that's super important. But I also think on the climate change thing, it's important to emphasize, it's this kind of difference between weather and climate, which weather is what you're kind of having now. Climate is sort of the long-term thing. And so it's like, the facts are the facts. They are what they are. You can't change that. So to me, one thing I would emphasize is that Portage Glacier was all the way up to that rock face where the tunnel is in 1912. There's not an alternative fact to that. So that's what that is. So I don't know. To me, I think it's important to mention the facts and the scientific community, the way they see it, and leave it at that. And if somebody wants to disagree, then that's okay. So I also have a comment and a maybe suggestion. And so this year I went out to Haida Gwaii and boated down there. And so I don't know if you know, Haida Gwaii is co-managed by Gwaii-Haanas National Park of the Canadian National Park Service, by the Haida Nation, and also by it's the I forget, Oceans Canada, I forget their exact title or something like that. So it's managed by these things. And they have these watchman stations at various places. And I would encourage you guys to look this up. But it was a fantastic and amazing way to interact more with the cultural heritage of that region. And I mean, as I've said, I've spent 30 years boating around Prince William Sound. I know it really well. But I hate to say this. I mean, to me, the cultural impact of being in Prince William Sound was not nearly as strong as a short period of time on Haida Gwaii. And it was basically because there was a really rich way to go visit the native communities there, and they were sort of set up for you to be able to talk to them. And I mean, like, I've gone to Chenega and Tititlik, the native communities are there. But I mean, I could imagine that there'd be opportunities for native communities, native groups, potentially to work with the land managers to set up a location where, basically the richer cultural history of the region could be shown. In the case of Guayhanas, it was really focused on, in some places, I mean, there's still existing totem poles out there and what the significance and meaning of the totem poles are. But anyway, just a suggestion and a thought so that people could have a richer experience here.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll also mention the Baggage Bogs Visitor Center, which does have some cultural interpretation. You can come see our movie, which shows a lot of the Indigenous stories, as well as some of the other ways that Indigenous folks have interacted with this landscape. So just a plug for the Visitor Center.
Hey there. So I'm sure all of us guiding or having been on vessels doing things with passengers and tourists have gotten those questions that absolutely just stump you, that you don't know an answer to. How do you address those topics? Do you have any recommendations where you don't go past your boundaries in a topic, but don't at the same time lose your credibility when talking about items you do know? Do you have any personal recommendations? Do you have any insight into that kind of topic?
I can start off with a real short answer. I learned to say I don't know, so that I wouldn't lose that credibility, but then try to deflect a little bit and talk about ways people could either find out about that or divert them to something I did know about. But yeah, I tried, because they would know likely if you just not made something up, but guessed at it. And I think that's a good way to keep your credibility, saying, I don't know, it's a great question.
And I love the let's find out together. And that's a pretty classic one.
Yes, same.
Well, I think that's all the time we have. But thank you all so much for your questions. Thank you to my fellow panelists. And hopefully we can do this again. If you like this talk or any of the other talks we're having, please consider filling out our survey. We simplified our survey to make it even easier this year. And that feedback helps us decide what you want to see more of and what we're going to do next year. So I'll be around. I assume these lovely folks will be around too. So if you have any more questions or want to chat with us, please feel free to come up and talk to us today or tomorrow.